Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the November 5th Grove County School Board meeting. Tonight, Pledge of Allegiance will be led by myself. In our moment of silence tonight, I'd like to recognize these two families, and please remember them in your prayers. Nate Isabel, Rock Springs students and faculty, and Christopher Bell, Stewart's Creek High students and faculty. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. All right. Approval of the agenda. I have a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Estes, do I have a second? Ms. Bratton? All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes. Approval of the consent agenda. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Estes, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. What pages is there? Yeah. All right, number 6, visitors. We do have visitors, Mr. Mike Waller. Would you like to come to the podium? And
Thank you very much, sir. It's a pleasure to be here with you tonight, and I want to begin by thanking all of you for everything you do for our young people here in the county. I'm here joined by Mr. Marty Luffman, who's the Smyrna historian, to update you on the status of the dam at the Sam Davis home. And I realize some of you board members are new since the last time we visited with you, but I've put a packet before each of you that has a sequence of events. And if Tiffany, you correct me anywhere I'm wrong, but back in February of this year, or really it started in December, but back in February, there was a public comment period about the removal of a historic dam at the Sam Davis home, which is on the other side of the creek is Rutherford County School property, Smyrna Elementary School. I reacted to the sign along with 5 other people, and it was one of those situations that the more questions you asked, the more questions you had. But very simply, we learned that they were attempting to destroy this dam to gain mitigation credits, which were transferable for value, and they were doing so without the approval of the landowners. Well, that really caught my ire, being a former farmer and a present landowner here, and knowing the rights of individuals. So I appealed their decision. We lost our appeal, but thanks to Mr. Greg Tucker, thanks to Mr. Greg Tucker, he prevailed with the Tennessee Historical Commission because the Sam Davis home is on the National Historic Register. So they had ruled originally based on some erroneous information. After they looked back at minutes of trustee meetings back in the 30s when this dam was built and looked at available information, they reversed that decision, and now they say it is a historical landmark that needs to be preserved. Now, I will be the first to tell you, I don't know where the buck stops on this. I appealed to the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation. We had a a hearing, we had court reporters, we had testimony. Nothing was said about ownership. They turned down our appeal over a technicality in that my appeal did not mention storm water. I referred to stormwater management, but I didn't mention water quality, so they denied it. But then subsequently, the Historical Commission came forward and rendered their decision. Marty and I are here tonight and be happy to stay afterwards to answer any questions you may have, because I know you've got a busy agenda. That the hook?
If you could just wrap it up real quick.
Yes, sir. We would like to offer to you, the dam on your side, the stream bank is washed out. And there's some pictures in your packet. They may be hard to see, but it won't take much to restore it and to stabilize it. We would like to offer to you that we will, with volunteers and individual contributions, we're not asking for any money. We don't want any tax dollars to do this. We think the community will step up to the plate and pay whatever expenses we have to restore the creek bank. What we feel like we need from you, since it is your property and half of the dam belongs to the school board, is to coordinate with the Corps of Engineers. And I've noted there the two things that we think we need from the Corps of Engineers that we would like to ask you to consider doing for us. We don't feel like we can proceed raising funds, going to the community without a plan approved by the Corps of Engineers for us to do this. And as I say, we'll stick around after the meeting to feel free to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Waller. All right, number 7.
Number 7 is foreign exchange students, on tab 2. ESL would like to recommend a 1-year suspension of foreign exchange students being enrolled in Rutherford County schools due to the uncertainty of COVID and potential challenges related to COVID. Applications will be arriving in January. Motion to approve the 1-year suspension of the foreign exchange students being enrolled in Rutherford County schools for the 2021-2022 school year.
All right, do we have a motion? Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. How many students does this entail?
I asked that question. I think it was about 30?
Yeah, it's usually just a couple dozen students. It can change this year. Our applications were less because of everything, but usually it's a couple dozen.
This is a safety precaution, honestly.
Mm-hmm. You know, just like shutting the schools down, it would, you know, when we have those things occur, this is for safety purpose.
Thank you.
Have a motion?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Do we have a second? Thank you, Ms. Maxwell. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Number 8, Mr.
All right, this is another sponsorship, this time Laverne, Riverdale, and Rockvale, with the MTSU sponsorship agreement found on tab 3. MTSU, Laverne High, Riverdale, and Rockville High are requesting that the board approve partnerships in which MTSU advertising banners will be placed over entrances to the football stadiums, gyms. In exchange, MTSU will pay each school $5,000 a year. MTSU has similar agreements with Oakland High School, Siegel High School, Stewart's Creek, and Eagleville. The language of all agreements is identical, with the only difference being the location of the signs at each school. Motion to approve the MTSU sponsorship agreement for up to 4 years.
Any questions? Do we have a motion?
Motion. Second.
Maxwell, Ms. Sharp, second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, number 9.
All right, number 9 is the NEIT support for Rutherford County Schools found on tab 4. This would be some in-service that will be offered on the first day back from the spring semester on January the 4th. Curriculum and Instruction Department would like to allocate $15,000 of Title II funds to provide principals and teacher leader training The training will be provided by the National Institute of Excellence in Teaching and will provide support to the area of virtual instruction strategies for students. This training will help school leaders and teacher leaders understand how to coach and support teachers on using high-quality teaching practices in a virtual classroom. It will provide an understanding of how school leaders can use the NIET rubric companion tool for virtual instruction to support their teachers. Motion to approve the allocating of $15,000 of Title II funds to provide training for our school teacher leaders in the area of virtual instructional strategies for students. This training will be provided by the National Institute of Excellence in Teaching.
All right, any questions? All right, do we have a motion? Thank you, Ms. Bratton. Do I have a second? Estes, second. All in favor say aye. Any opposed?
I just had a question. We didn't do any discussion, so I'd just like to know roughly how many administrators and teachers that are going to be able to benefit from this training.
Every one of them.
Good.
All right.
That was important. Thank you.
Motion passed, so any opposition? All right, number 10.
All right, this is to replace the 100% of makeup air heaters at Laverne and Smyrna pools in their schools. These pools are used for instructional purposes in the wellness and PE classes. The outside air makeup unit heater at Laverne is beyond repair and must be replaced, and the unit at Smyrna is in the same condition but still running today. Maintenance needs to replace both units and has recently bid out the project for approval on the consent agenda. Funding for this was not budgeted as a single line item, but is included in the HVAC capital projects request for both schools. Engineering and construction request approval to transfer $140,000 from the Buchanan sewer project to a single line item for LHS and SHS pool makeup air unit replacement. Before we go to the motion, Mr. Lee, is there anything you want to add to that?
Both of these areas do not have air conditioning. They have heat only. Air is because of the chlorine in the pool. Air is circulated by ventilation fans that are on the side of the building. So without these units, there's no heat in the entire pool area. And with them being used for gym and some other things, we're kind of in the wrong time of the year for them to decide to die. But we do need desperately to get these fixed. And the best way to do it, we think we've got $1.5 million budgeted in the Buchanan sewer project. We feel fairly comfortable that that will be adequate, and we can take $140,000 from it out of capital projects to take care of this expenditure. $65,000 for one and roughly $70,000 for the other. Anytime you deal with units this old in buildings like this, we're building in a little bit of contingency there. That's why we're asking for $140,000.
Are these original to the school?
Yes, ma'am, they are.
Okay.
I appreciate your explanation. Very hard to spend this kind of money in this season on this item. So you're saying, and I've been in the pool area, so the need to air condition, I need a little clarification. It's the heat or the air?
We have no air. The only thing for air that we have in the pool area is they have fans that open on the side of the building that draws in. Basically, it transfers air from the inside out. That works spring, summer, early fall, but as you go through this period, as we go into winter, we can't pull in 30-degree air because then it'll be 30 degrees. So that's why it's 100%. These units are heat only. They don't provide any air conditioning. They are strictly heat to heat the area, the big pool area.
When will this project be started, and how long is it going to take to complete, and when will it interfere with the use of the facility?
Smyrna right now is still running, so we would do Laverne first because it's out. So I've got the bids already. I'll have to go to Health and Ed to get the final approval to move the money, but once we have that approval, we'll write the PO, and they'll be as soon as we can get the units.
All right, motion to approve transferring $140,000 from the capital projects of Buchanan Sewer Project to LHS and SHS 100% makeup air unit replacement.
All right, do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Sharp. Do I have a second? Ms. Maxwell, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Number 11, insurance date.
As you know, our October meeting was canceled, so our next meeting will be November 19th in 2 weeks, and we'll have an update at that time.
Thank you, Dr. Anthony.
Anthony?
Yes, ma'am.
How's the enrollment going?
Good, very well, very well. We've had several people that have taken advantage of that and have updated their beneficiary names, which has been an area that the insurance department is wanting everybody to work on.
What is the deadline?
It was November the 2nd at
It's already
noon.
happened, okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, number 12, director's update.
All right, first, as a reminder, we're going to have a rezoning meeting. It's next Thursday, is that correct? At 6:30 at Rockville Elementary School. We'll be looking at rezoning of Rockville Elementary, Barfield Elementary, Christiana Elementary, and Buchanan Elementary. I think all total, in terms of portables, 30, is that correct?
34.
34 portables. Mr. Morgan will not be coming out of the bullpen. He's at home for a while. So Mr. Evans will be coming out of the bullpen. He'll be returning here the next day. I think tomorrow. Is it tomorrow he returns? Okay, so he'll be working with us on that. We've already pushed out the information. We'll continue to push that out starting tomorrow for parents, so they'll know. All right, the second thing is we're going to talk a little bit about COVID, since we've been having some issues with having to close the schools. You know, one of the things that I'll first call your attention to, since we've been back from fall break, is the one sheet that I gave you called the White House Task Force Map. And as you look at that, they break it down into 3 different zones, and there's some metrics that determine what zone you're in. The red zone, during the last week, reported both new cases are at or above 101 per 100,000 population, and the positivity result is at or above 10.1%. In the orange zone, during the last week, reported both new cases are between 51 and 100 per 100,000 population, and the lab test positivity result is between 8 and 10%, or one of those conditions qualifying as being in the red zone. And in the yellow zone is during the last week reported both new cases are between 10 to 50 per 100,000 population, and the lab test positivity is between 5% and 7.9%, or those 2 conditions or 1 condition can qualify to the orange or red zone. Rutherford County, like a lot of counties, quite frankly, in the mid-state area, is currently in the red zone. And a lot of it has to do with not only new cases, but the positive rate. All right, the second sheet where talks about the data dashboard, if you will. This is from up to November the 4th. I can tell you today we did have only 1,213 active cases. That's down a little bit. However, if you'll look it over to the far right, and you look at over the last 7 days, and that was from October the 29th to November the 4th, and Rutherford County had a daily case rate of 31.9 cases per every 100,000 residents per day. If you look at it in the average number of cases over the last 14 days, during that time period, 132.1 new cases were reported. That's a lot. And down at the very bottom there, where he says over the last 7 days, the average percent of positive rate was 12.5%. So you can see that it's taken off a little bit here. All right, to give you a little idea of where we are as far as our, I'm going to start off with our teachers or our staff. Currently, we have somewhere around 30 positive cases that are still active for our staff. we have 294 that are quarantined due to contact tracing. Now, one of the issues that we have in terms of staff, which makes it a little bit more problematic than perhaps students, is our substitute fill rate. In August, we had a substitute fill rate of 74.85%. In September, we had a substitute fill rate of 68.46%. In October, we had a substitute fill rate of 65.01%, and currently we're probably hitting the low 60s in our fill rate. And we're getting more and more teachers and staff that are going out on quarantine. Now, as far as our students are concerned, we do have, as far as our students are concerned, we do have some positive with our students, but the majority, we've got 2,500 students currently that are either out due to contact tracing or out due to being positive. 83% of them are out due to contact tracing. Make sure I said that. 83% are out due to contact tracing. Now, they call that quarantine. A person can get COVID, test positive, and what we call isolate for 10 days, and 48 hours of no symptoms, can come back. But a person who is quarantined has to remain that way for 14 days. We've had people in the central office who have tested positive, have come back before the people who have quarantined. Now, the reasoning behind that is the incubation period. The incubation period is for 14 days. We've had this discussion many times with our state health department, people in our online meetings that we have with the State Department. Normally, if you look at it on an average, and it's not always this way, but on an average, the COVID symptoms will manifest themselves between 6 and 7 days. We've requested, can we test, if they want to be tested, can we test them? They say no, that they have to carry out the 14 days. And every school system in the state of Tennessee is facing this same dilemma. And it's challenging. Now, how does that impact? Well, if I shut down Stewart's Creek High School, which we have, we may have some teachers there who have kids, or we may have teachers over at Stewart's Creek Middle who have kids go to the high school or vice versa. So it impacts a lot when we start talking about this. It really has, especially in these schools where you have the 3 schools together, it can impact them a lot. Now, I will tell you that we have seen more incidents in high schools. Where there's more, of course, there's a larger group. Not only that, but they're probably a little bit more social, if you will, around the larger groups. So we're fighting a really difficult task right now. We really are. And I will say this: our teachers and our administrators are doing a fabulous job. But this is not an easy thing at all. And I just want to bring you up to this. In our sub-fill rate, it's no different. I had Dr. Anthony reach out to, and you might want to speak on that, Dr. Anthony.
Yes, sir. I called similar sized districts such as Williamson, who was at 39 to 40% fill rate. They kind of wonder why we were calling with us hitting at 65 on average. But most of them are just very desperate. They're going through the same things. For instance, Williamson said they had 1,000 subs ready to substitute, but many of them had the same issues. They were staying home because their own children were distance learning. Without insurance due to the sub-programs that they were involved with, they didn't feel comfortable going to schools that may have had higher numbers or concentrations. They've been quarantining themselves. So it's the same, same across the border. I talked to Hamilton County the same way. They've been right at 59, 60%. Clarkson Montgomery, same thing. Robertson, they've been having a really hard time, and they've been right at 60%. Maury County, we tried to get out of them, but they were closing schools so fast, they just didn't have that kind of time to be able to respond. And then, of course, we tried Shelby, Davidson, and Knox, and not heard back from them.
You know, it's getting now on my weekly morning update. I have Ms. Winters and Mr. Evans submit me where we are. I have to look and see who's coming back off of quarantine where I can project out when I can open up a school again. Staff is important. We can do distance learning with, you know, kids that are at home, but what do we do with those kids that are still in the building when we don't have the staff to supervise them while the teacher is doing that? So we're getting in that. This is probably more problematic than it's been since we've opened schools. I know transportation got hit. You know, no one likes to shut down buses and give options to get a ride to school. I mean, obviously, we don't want to do that, but we were just decimated, were we not, Mr. Everett?
Yes, sir, we had 12 buses down, 10 of them were for contact.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. And I just want the people to understand this is not our choice. Contact tracing is not our choice. We must follow the guidelines of the health department. And we can't quarantine anyone. That comes right from the health department. Now, we can make you stay off of our campus if we think you've been exposed to it, but we can't quarantine anyone. And I know there's been a lot of misinformation or maybe some disinformation being put out there in terms that we're trying to make this worse than what it is. You know, the last time I heard this was going to be over with, I've been banking on this would be over with after the election, and it's still going on right now, and I don't know if I'd like to see it stop for a while because we are getting a lot of challenges on our hands, but we'll continue to work this process, and eventually it'll get a lot better.
Mr. Spurlock, if you would, please. You said 2,500 were out for contact tracing. What was...
About 82% of the 2,500 are out by contact tracing.
Okay, so do you have a number of students with the positive?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
What was the number that you gave?
I'd have to go back. The email was down today. I've got 33 from you or something like that. Dr. Harrell, how many students did you have, like 30?
Well, I have my sheet. I checked on the top. So you're asking how many positive students today? 28?
No, complete. To 28 today?
Yes.
Okay, 28. That's one school. And quite frankly, that's where we're seeing it in clusters. It's coming in clusters. I think Stewart's Creek was a cluster that got slammed pretty hard, and Rockvale was a cluster that got slammed pretty hard. So those are two schools that stick out right now, but Blackman, we've had to close them today, the same thing. And we're looking at, in Blackman's case, like I said, the students we can work with because they can go on distance learning and whatever, but when we don't have the staff to address those that are on campus, then we have no choice. And it's a difficult thing because I know you've all read the letter that was sent by the lady today, and I feel for her on these. I think there was some things that was misunderstood in there about the sniffles and things of that nature. I think that was taken care of because I did speak to the principal there at that school. But it is a difficult task that we have ahead of us, and we're doing. And I think the staffs at our schools are doing a great job. I mean, they're cleaning, but we can only control what is in the building. We can't control what comes into the building. And unfortunately, a lot of students are asymptomatic.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Dr. Anthony. As it pertains to the substitute teaching situation, I get it. I get that it's a tough situation. My daughter is a substitute teacher in our system. Are they actively working to find more? I'm not seeing any signs or anything. And where are they actively looking And is there any way we can help with that?
Yes, they are. Their goal is to try to get at least 20 extra a week, and then they're also looking at possibly redistributing some that are in other schools that have a higher fill rate. I talked to both Janet and the vice president today from the company. So they're constantly looking, advertising. They're going to the same virtual job fairs that we're doing as well to try to see if there's anybody that has some down days. Maybe they are only going to classes Monday, Wednesday, Friday to pick up Tuesday and Thursday, because most of the schools are starting their graduations in November, so they're hoping to pick up some of those graduates, so we see them all the time.
Any other questions? All right, number 13, Tennessee Legislator Network. Ms. Bratton, do you have any updates?
Yes. Ms. Maxwell and I have been attending some TSBA leadership series that are webinars, and yesterday was the parliamentary procedures, which I'm not going to report out on, but I did copy a couple of handouts for y'all. It was very interesting that Robert's Rules is now newly revised from 11 to 12, and so I did give you a handout on that, and I also gave you a handout on the precedence of motion ladder. I thought that was really interesting. They kept going over, here's where you have to do the motion, then here's where you have to second it, then here's where you have to do this. No, you can't go back down the ladder until you've hit certain steps. Today was the legislative update on the 2020 election, and much time was spent on the national election statistics and the Electoral College. I learned a lot. However, they finally got to the state of Tennessee. In the state of Tennessee, 3,045,401 voted in the presidential election, with 2,280,767 being early voters. It is a record that they've never seen before. 68% of our registered voters actually voted in this election. In the state elections, we had 16 Senate seats that were up for election, with 12 of them being contested races. District 20 was the only flip from Republican to Democrat, with the Republicans retaining a super majority of 27-6. What's really important here is the chairman of our education committee, who was Dolores Graham, is not coming back. So Dolores Gresham, I'm sorry, you're exactly right. I can't even read my own writing. And Steve Dickerson did not return to the Senate, and so they left 2 vacancies on the Education Committee. So those have to be filled. The House had a large change with 99 seats up for election, but only 47 contested races. So you're going, where'd the rest of those people go? They either lost their primaries or they decided not to run for re-election. There were notable changes on the voucher issue, which is a great concern to all of us, with the lost primaries and the people not seeking re-election. Some of the House winners did have their platforms listed. It lists TSBA, search for the ones on education. And the House winners support better schools, they support teachers and active teacher retention, high-quality public education, and keeping public education with the LEAs. The bills that are expected to come up in the future, surprise, accountability. We will have the tests, but hold teachers and schools harmless is what we are looking forward to doing. The BEP rules, they also want us to be held harmless on that. And learning loss. They want something to address learning loss in students this year, such as extended time or summer school options. So in that 1 hour, I learned quite a bit about what's going on at the state legislature.
Any other comments? All right, federal relations.
I have nothing.
You have nothing this evening, all right. That takes us to 15, general discussion.
I have something I would like. Most of y'all know my background is being an EA in special ed, and I've had numerous people come and talk to me, and I knew this was going to happen. I've mentioned it before, but the new normal is that nothing's going to be normal, and that we may have to close down periodically and such. But I had a heartbreaking email from a lady of a child, and she was just really concerned that her child is going to have to come home, and she's going to have to stay home with this child, and this child cannot virtual at all. Severe CDC with autism. This child was also blind. And my heart just went out to her. And then I talked to a friend of mine who's over in Williamson County, and their CDC never shuts down. Unless there's a positive, teacher in the classroom, they keep it open. And I really would like, I should have had this on the discussion, but I just got this email on Monday and I've been out of town, but I really would like for us to consider maybe not shutting down. See, I took an informal poll of people, the teachers that I know, and they're all willing to keep the doors open.
Yeah, we've actually amended that.
Okay.
Yeah, we did that when we shut down, what was the school? Was it Rockville?
We did 2 high schools. It wasn't a complete every student, but we
But
had some students.
It was those severely profound.
Right. We did.
See kids. Yeah, we did that.
Okay, I'm so.
No, that's no problem.
That's great.
Yeah.
Good comment. Anything else?
One note that I should have probably mentioned, Representative John DeBerry out of Memphis lost to a new, someone new, and he was very much in favor of education from being from Memphis. So it's a loss really for the whole state. He was against vouchers and everything. His party threw him out because he kind of disagreed with him on a few things. But that's Representative John DeBerry is a great loss for education.
Nothing else. I do have a couple things I need to bring up. I was contacted by Mr. Robert P., our commissioner, and he was wanting us to take in consideration of renaming the Plainview Elementary School after Joe Frank Jernigan. And I told him I would bring that up in discussion, and we would put it out to the school board members to be thinking about that. In the meantime, I did ask Mr. Reed to look up on our policies, and we do have a policy against on how we do name schools. And Mr. Reed, can you share that information?
Yeah, this has come up through the years. We do have a policy, which is policy 3.210, that says schools should not be named for living persons except for those who have rendered exemplary service to public education as recognized and attested by a vote of the board. And there's other limitations on it, but I guess that's one it's the most immediate one we'd have to consider and look at. But currently, we have a provision that says schools should not be named for living persons, and except for those who have basically worked in public education.
So with that in consideration, I'm not sure Mr. Jernigan would meet either one of those requirements. So we would have to go against policy if we was to do anything, if we took any kind of action here. I'm one that I never want to go against policy. Whatever our policy is, I want to stay consistent and make sure that we follow it. But I did promise Commissioner P. that I would bring this up, and I just wanted to share it with you guys and see what your thoughts were. And if y'all would like to add any discussion, please let it be known.
I would agree that we need to stay with the policy, because I also think about the fact that we have so many people in this community that certainly would be worthy of having a school named after them. And there's actually another Jernigan that I'm thinking of that was on our committee that's been a member of that Plainview community for years that was very active in public education and everything. So I would think it would be best to, with all due respect to Commissioner, I think it would be best we stay with policy.
I agree.
I'll let Mr. P. know that we did discuss it, and the consensus of the board is we would stick with policy and wouldn't make any changes at this time. Thank you. Let's see, what else? I thought I had something else. Oh, yeah, we need to talk about this issue at the dam, Sam Davis Home Dam. I guess we need to get some direction here where we need to take this and find out, is there something we can do as a school board, or is there nothing we can do as a school board? And I guess Mr. Lee, if you could help here, have you had any contact with the Corps of Engineers, any discussion about whether we need to tear this down or need to repair it, or what's?
My first knowledge of this was when they came before us some time back about wanting to take it down. We have not been involved in any conversations with the Corps of Engineers or TDEC or anybody up until this point. No, sir.
Okay. Well, in respect to Mr. Waller here, he is asking that we confirm with the Corps of Engineers that initiative by Cumberland River Compact and Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation has become void due to position of the Tennessee Historical Commission. So he would like to develop a plan to stabilize the creek bank and secure concurrence of the Corps of Engineers. So if we decide, I guess we need to know, number one, if we decide we want to stabilize this bank and keep the dam, we need to know if we can do that. I guess.
I think the first thing we need to do is get in touch with TDEC and get the information from TDEC for us to review. What's their recommendation? What are they thinking? Gather some information, because we haven't been a party to any meetings or anything like that, to my knowledge.
Okay.
So I think the first thing we need to do is probably gather some information. Let me see what I can, get submitted to us through TDEC and what permits have or have not been done, and where we go from there, and then maybe bring some information forward for you all to look at, and then potentially go from there.
I think I may have an answer to some of those questions, and I'll be happy to share it with you. I'm under the impression, based upon some comment responses and some letters I have here, that the decision now rests with the Corps of Engineers. I have sent an email to try to verify that to TDEC, but I may or may not get a response. But I've got phone numbers and email addresses and letters that I'll be happy to share with you.
That'd be fine, but I think I know who the contact is for the Corps of Engineers. I've been dealing with them on another project of ours quite a lot over the last 2 months. So I think I know who has jurisdiction at the Corps.
That's one of the issues, and one of the problems we've had is just what is the pecking order? What's the sequence? Who has the final say-so? And of course, we think we've learned that TDEC, all they're concerned about is the water quality. They could care less about who owns the dam and that. But anyway, I'll make you some copies and get those back to you.
That'd be fine.
Okay, so if you
let me see what I can get from TDEC and the Corps, what information they've got, whatever information Mr. Reed had last week. Let me get a few weeks to gather all this stuff together, and then maybe I can have something put together for you by our next board meeting.
Sure. We'll be more than happy to help you with anything you've got. It just, again, we felt like it was your position, since it's your dam, or you're the overseer. We really didn't feel like it was our position to go digging into that, but we'll be happy to work with you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Colonel Waller. You mentioned earlier about the repairing of the dam, that was a potential. Is that correct? Instead of removing it, but you want to repair it?
We want to stabilize the bank. The dam's okay. I mean, you can look at those pictures. I mean, it's got some superficial rocks missing that could be repaired, but our focus is on stabilizing the bank, the creek bank, on the school board side of the dam. You may know the answer to this, but I really feel like that when we had the floods a few years ago, that's when the damage was done to that bank, and you were there. I don't know.
It's my understanding that actually the bottom of the dam is actually not stable. There, on the Sam Davis side, there are holes on the bottom of the dam that allow for water and whatnot. On the Sam Davis side, it is still there, or they're still free flowing. On the school side, they are not. And so it's my understanding that it's actually a very expensive project to stabilize it. Now, we could stabilize the dam. The integrity of the dam is very compromised, as I understand it. So it was my understanding on conversations I've had with people in the community that you may be wanting to raise funds to try to stabilize the dam. And I'm asking what's your estimate? Do you have estimates?
I do not, and I'm not an engineer. I wouldn't have any idea. And with the water levels like they were yesterday and today, it's difficult to tell anything about it. Now, next summer, when the water levels drop and you can see a little bit more on the downside of the dam, you may be able to tell about that. But, gosh, the thing's 85 years old?
1939. It
Yeah,
was.
it's in pretty good shape, really, to have been built back in those days. But, again, our focus right now is the creek bank. And if it was mine on my farm and I was doing it, a couple loads of riprap would take care of it. And I wouldn't have to get permission from anybody. But in this situation, we know that the creek is redlined on the maps, which means the Corps of Engineers has jurisdiction because it's a tributary to Percy Priest, and so I'm sure they will have an opinion. Now, they may not have the final say-so, but maybe they'll be able to answer those questions as well.
It's my understanding that TDEC has already issued the permit for the removal of the dam, and several years of research has gone into determining whether this dam was viable or not. And from my position, if it can be stabilized, which is my understanding that it cannot be stabilized, I have a concern for the safety. As you've mentioned, I was out there.
Sure.
Representative Mike Sparks tells a funny story, not a funny story, but a childhood story of being out there playing on the dam and somebody potentially drowning. There were a couple canoers who recently got caught up in that, and they nearly drowned. Luckily, the director was out there. I personally have had my children playing on the dam when I was director. It is a safety hazard, and it is a great concern. So I would be interested to see and learn more information, and I'm particularly interested to see what TDEC has to say about the viability of that dam. So
I don't recall anything in their permit request, and I've got all of these copies. I've got a 28-page document where they approved it that has all kinds of charts and graphs, but I don't recall anything other than them claiming that the dam was obsolete. But as I say, I'll be happy to share everything I've got with you.
thank you. I was really very concerned or very curious as to the cost to cure.
Don't have any idea. Sorry, I can't help you with that. Thank you.
I'd like to ask a couple of questions.
Sure.
You used the term several years when you were addressing the dam, saying several years had been studied, and they found that it wasn't stabilized several years ago. How many is several? When did y'all first start looking into the dam?
I started in May of 2016 at the Sam Davis home, and the Cumberland River Compact had already begun their research. So since 2015, I believe, when the Board of Trustees and the Board of Directors of the Sam Davis Memorial Home and Association approved it. They voted on it twice now for the removal.
Okay, so did y'all request them, the Cumberland Compact, to come out there and look at the dam? And you said it's not stable, and you're talking about the holes underneath the dam where it's not stable. How do we know that there's holes underneath the dam? I do know from personal experience, when we have built a dam on the farm, that we leave some space in there for water flow. So I'm not comfortable with you saying the dam, in your opinion, is not stable.
It's not an opinion. It's not my opinion. It's the information I've been provided by both the direct.
But you did say, I don't feel that the dam is stable.
No, I said I don't believe that it's safe based on my experience with the dam. There is
Okay.
documentation.
And then you illustrated with a couple of kayakers, and the kayakers have also had trouble at the Walter Hill Dam.
We're talking about the Sam Davis home dam, though, so I don't know.
Right. I'm just saying kayakers have issues. My orthopedic surgeon, who went in my heart, his kayak turned upside down on him, and he drowned.
It's awful. And I understand that. I think that anytime there's any kind of sport, obviously there's a risk that the people who engage
Right.
in the sports entertain. However, as a school board, we have to look knowing that that borders the school, and there are children who utilize that dam to get back and forth. In fact, there's a rope that's often tied to some of those major trees that, as we know, the limbs aren't so great, and they swing across from the school property. So in the documentation I've seen, we have not addressed a safety measure, and I was told that this evening we could anticipate you guys bringing to us a fundraising potential because there is a cost to cure. So if that is possible, wonderful, but the safety is my greatest concern.
Okay, but you said this went back to 2015?
In 2015, the Sam Davis Memorial Association entered into an agreement with the Cumberland River Compact to explore the potential of removing the dam.
Okay. So this has been going on 5 years. Exploring the dam has been going on 5 years now?
Not by the school board. We need to clarify that. Has nothing to do with the school board.
No.
No, I'm talking about Sam Davis home. You and I were on the board with the Sam Davis home, and I don't remember any of this ever coming up in discussion about the dam being dangerous, or the Cumberland River Compact, or his group. I don't remember any of these conversations, and I was on the board, I don't know how many years, but I was on there for a while, and I never heard any discussion about the dam being dangerous.
And maybe this is a conversation, since this is a school board meeting, maybe this conversation needs to be had in
After the
Sam Davis
meeting.
Memorial Association.
Okay.
But my question to you was, is there a cost to cure? And it was my understanding you guys were coming to give us that information this evening, and you didn't provide it. So that's what I was.
We'll talk after the meeting.
Wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. We do have other agenda items that we need to take care of, so is there any other discussions, general discussions? All right. If not, the meeting is adjourned.